Today guys, I'm going to be showing you my Game Week 1 Fantasy Premier League first draft. I'm going to be taking you through the squad, giving you some advice on certain positions, why I picked some, I would say, probably wayward choices in a lot of people's eyes, and some tips I've taken from other FPL YouTubers and streamers that you guys can use for this season. I'm just going to get straight into the squad. I've obviously, selected my 15 out of 15 players, and I have absolutely no money remaining. I'm just going to justify, I'd say, a couple of my choices because a couple of them aren't fan favourites, I will say. So the first thing I've gone for is obviously going to try and get the keepers under a 9 million budget. It's a tip that is recommended by a lot of people and something I haven't really used in the past, and I have gone with Sanchez of Brighton and Foster of Watford. Sanchez of Brighton because he kept 10 clean sheets in the 2400 minutes he played out of the 3400, because that is how many minutes, just for reference. And also I believe they were 6th in expected goals to be conceded. I believe they were 6th best in the league last year. I think that was the stat. And now, while they didn't live up to that all the time, I think they were very, very good at times, or at least very, very good in terms of some of their defenders getting a lot of points. I know a lot of people who beat me in fantasy football last year had the likes of Veltman and Lewis Dunk, and that really did end up in my demise, as I didn't have any Brighton defenders, and I would have other higher goalkeepers or higher value goalkeepers and defenders, and it didn't always work out in my favour. So that's why I've decided to go with Sanchez as the starting keeper. He's quite a popular choice. I don't know what his ownership is this year, and I can't find it. Oh yeah, it's 27% ownership this year, so obviously he's quite a popular choice. But my second choice is going to be Foster, as really a fan favourite all over YouTube. People will know who Ben Foster is at this stage. He was, should I say, the first choice goalkeeper for Watford. He played every single minute 2 seasons in a row before they got relegated last year. Now they've gone back up to the Premier League, and Foster is of course the second choice goalkeeper. He got an injury, I think he broke his hand or something, and he's quite old at this stage. I believe he could be 37, 38. He's not going to be the starting goalkeeper in my opinion. However, I think if there was any goalkeeper who's likely to get into the squad, and who even works hard enough to get into the squad or has proven himself, is probably going to be Ben Foster. At 4 million, there's not many other keepers that you can get that probably will get a look in. There's 4 million keepers all over the place, I'd say, in fantasy football, but I'd say a lot of them won't even be considered looking. Foster, I believe, played about 20 games before he got that injury, and he didn't play many more games in the Championship that season, but he still played bits here and there, and I think he is a trusted member within Watford, to the point where I think he could play some games. While that doesn't always matter, if there is for some reason a situation where you have to put Foster in, it is not the end of the world, because there is a potential that he could play. Moving on to the defence, we've got Ayling, Alexander-Arnold, Luke Shaw, Manquillo and Connor Cody. I play a 3-man defence, with it either being Trent, Shaw, Cody, or Ayling, Alexander-Arnold and Shaw, depending on the fixtures. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So if we go to Luke Ayling, as you can see here, their clean sheets were not bad whatsoever. They get 12 clean sheets, which is, of course, not the best, considering there's teams like Brighton who really struggled last season, only keeping 10. And while Leeds' defences scored, or conceded, should I say, a lot of goals a game, like 6 to Man United, which obviously results sometimes in minus points for players, depending on what yellow cards, red cards they've got. I do believe that Luke Ayling is a great option at 4.5 million. Dallas, unfortunately, has been moved up into midfield, and I'll get onto that in a second. But I feel like as the other sort of attacking minded defender option, I think Luke Ayling isn't that bad. While he obviously got no goals and assists, I see him obviously push up a lot more up the pitch than some of his counterparts, such as Struijk. And I think he's the guaranteed starter as well, I'd say, in that Leeds defence. There are a couple of young guys such as Struijk who don't always play every minute, and he played near enough to every single minute last season. And I just think that he's not the worst option in the world. While I probably won't be putting him for some of his fixtures, because some of his fixtures aren't really favourable in the first 5 game weeks. Burnley, Newcastle, great fixtures, but Man United, Everton, Liverpool, not amazing. It's something that I've considered. I wasn't going to put him in because a lot of people are shying away from Leeds players because they see that Man United fixture. but I am going to be trying to keep him in for some of his easy run of fixtures, because with a hard run of fixtures, there's always going to be an easy one to obviously follow it on at some stage in the season. The second person that I might put in, of course, with these two premium middle range defenders is going to be Connor Cody. I believe Wolves kept 10 clean sheets, which of course is not bad. He played almost every minute as captain of the Wolves defence, being a centre back. Like Ayling, did not get many goals and goal contributions whatsoever, and that's not really where the points lie. It's more so that he's very cheap. He allows for value to be increased in other positions, and he could just do the exact same job that other high premium 6 million to 6.5 million or even 5 million to 5.5 million defenders will just do the same. A lot of people are going to probably go for the Cresswells, as you can see on the screen now. I just think Cody's probably just as good of an option. I think Wolves will probably have underperformed last season. I think they will perform better this season. I think they've got more in them. With the departure of Rui Patricio, that will obviously hurt them a little bit. But I think Cody is definitely capable of leading a defence that keeps more than 10 clean sheets, and even a 10 clean sheets, that's very good for 4.5 million centre back, or at least 4.5 million defender in fantasy football. Manquillo is sort of a last ditch. Like, he played 822 minutes. He's just good for that price. When you rank 4 million price defenders, this is the one that played the most minutes. I believe Lamptey might be there. Lamptey might be 4.5 million. He might have played a bit more, but I just only had 4 million left, so I thought Manquillo it is, because he played the most minutes last season. If for some reason someone gets injured and there's another defender at 4 million before his price rises, I'll try and get him in. But Manquillo has played the most minutes, so I thought it was the most logical. Shaw's come off a great Euros and really a very good season defensively and goal contributions wise. For Man United, considering where he was in previous seasons. He got 1 goal and the 5 assists with 10 clean sheets, which is very good. For 5.5 million, and obviously I think he might have been around the same price, maybe a bit cheaper last season, but he was someone who everyone hopped on the bandwagon of, and I think he would have been a little less popular had he not performed at the Euros as well. And I think Ole would look at the way he provided England from set pieces and say, that's what I need to do. Like, the way he set up England for multiple goals against Ukraine, and obviously scored in that final, I feel like he will Ole will try get him involved via set piece. I don't think a manager ignores those sort of performances, which is why I too am hopping on that Shaw bandwagon and putting him in. That's my justification for it anyway. I think Trent is also a good pick. He obviously isn't tired from the Euros since he didn't like playing it at all. He is a constant starter. While he is a premium priced defender, you just can't go wrong with Trent. These stats in the last few seasons: 2 goals scored, 8 assists, 4 goals scored, 15 assists, 1 goal scored, 13 assists. Liverpool underperformed last season, and at times so did Trent, especially early on in the season. Obviously he didn't play every single minute. There was obviously some parts where he didn't, but clean sheets wise, Liverpool did not have their best season, and Trent still came out with 160 points, which is fairly decent, even considering that premium price tag. And I always think of putting Robertson in. He's a little bit cheaper, or putting just a different defender in, but I just don't think you can go wrong with with the wing back that really started the attacking wing back trend in Alexander Arnold in 2018-19. I think that's why a lot of teams did it in the Euros. I think that's why a lot of teams do it to this day, and I think he's a really solid choice, and probably one of the most predictable choices. As you can see, he's owned by 27% of people. It's a lot, but I think he's a really, really good choice. There's also going to be the midfield here, which is where I get a bit iffy on my decisions, where I kind of can't really make up my mind at times, and where I actually think I start the entire midfield every game. So we're going to start off just from the most expensive, or least expensive to the most expensive, should I say, and that's going to be Basuma. I've only watched this guy play once, and I believe that was against Arsenal in one of the last games of the season last year. He's played a lot of minutes. For a 4.5 million midfielder, not bad, but there's a reason he's 4.5 million. While he is supposed to create an attacking threat, he really hasn't shown that. But Basuma has been linked, or at least for a tiny bit, he was linked at Arsenal. Like, he is not, I would say he isn't necessarily a player that's really, shone through in the Premier League yet, but I don't think that's because he's never going to shine through. I feel like although already playing a couple of seasons in the Prem, I feel like he just needs a little bit more time. I feel like he's one of those surprise players that could come through, and the reason at 4.5 million I would put him in is simply through a hunch. I think that if there was people and talk around him being interested in bigger clubs, when he scored 1 goal last season, there's just something about the player. This is based off a small segment that I listened to with Sky Sports commentating on that match. I have not seen much of Basuma whatsoever. He is selected by quite a few teams, probably as a bench player. He is someone I might move around, and I'll show you how I'll move him around in a sec. But he's just someone who I have a hunch about. I think he could do well. It's very rare the 4.5 million midfielder really has a shining season, but even if this guy scores like 2 or 3 goals, I would be fine with that. I don't think I would have a problem with that at all. And then moving on to some of the other midfielders, we've got Stuart Dallas. Obviously, it's disappointing that he's not a defender because, he would get the points for the clean sheet, and obviously the points for some of the assists and goals. He was just always attacking. As you can see, 8 goals scored and 3 assists with 12 clean sheets. He was just a great pick last year, especially if you had him early. He was one of the players that I had early. He just sort of slotted into people's teams, and then people had him as well. It was really good. Now again, his fixture's not looking too good, but again, now he's not a defender, so the clean sheets don't necessarily affect him as much. That obviously is annoying for these, the 7 to 10 game week fixtures. But I believe that Stuart Dallas is still not the worst pick in the world. Now, Stuart Dallas and Basuma are simply down to the prices that I could pay for players. Like, I only had 10 million left. It came down to 14 million actually, where in defender I had to go Manquillo, and then I had about 10 million left, and I picked all these other players before them. So this is where I sort of draw the line with going a bit risky and going almost a bit too cheap, and where I might have to change around my team, but it gets a little bit better, and I think the stats in other areas might make up for it, and especially since Dallas has proven himself to be a goal scorer. Does he have as good a season? Maybe not, but I think there's still definitely areas for him to pop up and score a goal every now and then. He's a midfielder now. He's not going to. Doesn't seem to be a formation change by Leeds by any stretch of the imagination. He's still going to be playing a very attacking role. And even though he missed out on the clean sheets, I don't think he's the worst in the world, or at least he wasn't the worst in the world for a 5.5 million midfielder. I'm going quite heavy on Leeds, as you can see. In terms of there's no Bamford here, and there's no more expensive Leeds defenders that I've picked. But I have gone with Rafinha. I feel like he's just one of many 6.5 million midfielders that you can pick. You don't have to pick Rafinha. I believe there's many others that you can go for. I think you can go if you select replacement and you went to 6.5. Ward-Prowse, Souček, Bowen, Harrison, Tielemans. But I just think Rafinha. I just think he's a better option. He played a lot of the minutes last season, but then again, he didn't play every single minute. You are going to have to watch out for the games he doesn't play. Obviously, that will hurt you at times, and maybe you want to pick a starter, but sometimes I think it is better to see who scores the points. He's got 133 points last season in only 2,300 minutes, which is very, very good. 6 goals scored, 10 assists, and the clean sheets will add minimum bonus points, but still not the worst in the world. I think he's a very good player, and I think unlike a Dallas, I don't think he'll have as much of a drop off at all. I think Rafinha will only get better. I think he's a quality player, and at 6.5 million, I don't think he can go wrong. I think he's the most attacking minded 6.5 million player. I was going to probably go with Ward-Prowse or Harrison. I just always make the mistake of going, the other side of player, Rafinha on the right had a great season, let's go for Harrison. But then I realised that sometimes a player who is just going to continue that form. They're just a decent player, they've proved themselves, and they're just going to continue that form. And sometimes you got to realise that players don't always have on and off seasons. Sometimes they simply just continue the decent form for a season to come. I think another one, people wanted to be different and not put in Salah, but again, Salah was great last season, or didn't want to put in Kane last season, and Kane was great last season in terms of football fantasy points. And you know, some people will not want to include Fernandes this season, but again, you can't ignore the points they bring to the table. And that's the same with James Ward-Prowse. I just think that, like, I don't think he gets as lucky with, like, he scored a lot of free kicks, I believe. You know, eight goals scored, 7 assists. You just can't really ignore that. And again, he played in 19-20 season, 5 goals, 4 assists. That's still very good for a 6.5 million player. And again, he takes penalties. He missed a couple of penalties towards the end of the season, which obviously, being a penalty taker, probably maybe works in his favour, being a good free kick taker. But I don't know if Ward-Prowse gets as lucky and gets as many moments to shine with his free kicks this season. And I just think I'm drawn to Rafinha a bit more, and I think he's able to probably bag a bit more assists. And I think Bamford as well will continue his form. Going on to 2 of my most premium players in the team is going to be Mohamed Salah and Bruno Fernandes. These players were just great last season. 231 points coming in from Salah, and then I believe 244 coming in from Bruno Fernandes. I think he was the highest point scorer in the entire thing last season. He takes penalties, sometimes takes free kicks, not afraid to have a long shot. He's just incredible playmaker. And I think he's just going to continue that form. I think there was actually times where, you know, just despite what a lot of people say about Bruno, I think he actually underperformed last season. Do I think he'll get more than 244? Maybe not. He got a lot of penalties last season. I do understand that. I don't know if that will continue this season. But he is somebody who gets involved in play, and I think that he actually at times was in and out of games, and I thought he wasn't incredible for Man United. And I think penalties probably, you know, padded his points, not necessarily his stats. I thought he was quite good, but his points in general probably led a lot of people to believe he had a great game every game. Not necessarily, you know, especially against some of the big teams, I will admit. But I think Fernandes is actually going to come into his own in the majority of the games this season. And I think he will get 200 plus points this season. I think if I see Man United and Ole, like, they've just been found out and they are conceding goals when they were one of the best defensive teams, they're not supplying Fernandes. If that sort of thing happens, you pull the plug and you just go, I'm not risking it. I will get rid of Fernandes, and I go Basuma out, Dallas out, there you go, and you wildcard it. Or you use 2 transfers 1 week, wait till next week, you have 1 transfer, there you go, you know. Man United's fixtures also aren't the worst for Fernandes for the first 4 game weeks, so he won't be really tested, I'd say, until the later game weeks going into the double digits. And Salah, just a great pick overall. Takes penalties, sometimes takes free kicks, and I think he's just always been a good player. He's always been a good player in football fantasy. Like, these last 4 seasons, you just can't lie. Like, 230 plus points for 4 seasons in a row. You can't ignore that. There's no point saying Salah won't do it. While he might have a slow start sometimes, or have, you know, bad patches in certain areas, like all players do, but, you know, Salah sometimes goes in and out of form. I think you can't ignore 230 plus points for 4 seasons straight. This is just one of the things that I was saying, like, people will try and be different and say, no, I don't think this player will continue the form. It's very unlikely he doesn't continue the form the same way. Liverpool weren't even good last season, and this is the type of numbers he was producing. And even when he's not scoring as many 22 goals a season, he's getting the assists, he's upping the assists. And I think with Liverpool probably improving this season, I would say, I think Salah can actually only go up, and I think he can have one of his better seasons. I think he can get 250 plus points, because as you can see here, it is possible. He did it 2 seasons in a row, and I think he does have it in him. Moving on to my strikers, I'm going to go for Harry Kane, and this is the reason I have Basuma and Dallas to begin with. And this is usually because I picked Kane too late last year. He obviously had proved himself, like, he'd scored, but I think I just triple captained him at 1 week where he had an easy fixture. I'd watched him a couple of times, and I just wasn't really impressed with Harry Kane at any stage that I watched him. I don't watch a whole lot of games with him in it, but I just think that Harry Kane sort of fooled me a little bit. And then when I look back on it, I think he just is a bit of a must-have for me. He played 300 minutes last year, 242 points, and I think you can't ignore that he had the most goals and most assists last season. While there was times where it almost seemed detrimental to your team to have a £12 million striker these 3 premiums allow so much to happen for your team. It just means that you can replace these 3 with anyone. With 2 transfers, you can really split the bill. Like if you really wanted to go and there was a really easy fixture against a team like, for example, Sheffield United last season were the team that conceded lots of goals, and you think there's a team like Everton coming up, and you really wanted to put in, let's say, you know, Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison or something. You just take out Kane, and you've almost got that budget by just moving that around, moving a couple of other players around, maybe benching Basuma. And by having these 3 premium players, it allows a lot of movement. Now, I would probably recommend not going with 3 premium players. This is just a risk that I've never taken before, and it's because I can't ignore the fact that these guys get so many points in Football Fantasy each season. And when I look at the other options and when I rejig the squad, it just doesn't fill me with as much confidence. Basuma is definitely the weakest link here. If I could probably replace Basuma, I would, but I just don't think there's anyone at 4.5 million who plays as many minutes. If I just do it by search by minutes played, it is Basuma. Unless one of these players plays more minutes, Basuma just by a landslide plays the most minutes. Hopefully one of these players gets into their starting 11 a bit more, but it doesn't seem like they will, and so Basuma just is the obvious pick. While, you know, there's other players I probably would say, like even, you know, Douglas Luiz with a lot more less minutes played got more goal contributions. Basuma's the most attacking player there, and I think he's just at that price because of how little he plays. I've then got Obafemi, the Irishman, in as a striker. He's just someone who, again, does not play much at all. Wasn't bad in the 1920 season when he came on, but he's just simply there because he's 4.5 million. He's a striker. Gonna keep him on the bench for almost the whole thing unless I'm bench boosting. I'll you know, slowly move him out, slowly move my team around. But yeah, I probably will just keep him on the bench the whole season. He's a quality striker, but I just don't think he'll play much for Southampton. I think it'll be Che Adams as usual. Then Ollie Watkins. This is again why I ended up picking Basuma and Dallas, because I could have picked a cheaper striker up front and gone with someone different from Basuma, which I still might do. But again, I can't ignore that when it goes at 7 million, Watkins, or when it goes, you know, above 6.5 million, Watkins has played the most minutes. Between 6 and 8 million, I believe he's played the most minutes out of all the players. And I'm not too sure. I just have a suspicion that Calvert-Lewin had an injury or something. Because when I look at Calvert-Lewin, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, might be... Oh, he's actually a little bit more expensive, so that would put me at a deficit. But if I really want to change my team around, I could put Calvert-Lewin in and possibly downgrade elsewhere. He played a little less, obviously getting a lot of goals and playing really well. I just think Watkins, despite obviously, you know, Southgate picking Calvert-Lewin over him, and the quality, I'd say there probably is a little bit of quality difference between them. That 0.5 million does draw me to Watkins a bit more. I think Aston Villa continues their form to a certain extent, and I think that Rafa Benitez's defensive style, he'll play it safe. You know, obviously, you know, Calvert-Lewin is going to be that number 9 coming in deep, but it will have an effect. It will have an effect on his goals, that they're playing more defensive, or at least it's predicted that they'll play more defensive under Benitez. But that is going to be my first draft team. I'm probably going to, coming closer to time, I'm probably going to release a video on my new draft, because there's a lot that you can pick apart with this team. There's a lot that's wrong with it, I'd say, in areas. And looking at I probably need to watch a bit more preseason, particularly Basuma. It's simply just a hunch for Basuma, and it's simply just because of the minutes he plays that I want to pick him. And I probably need to look at a couple of my premium players to see if they're performing in preseason as well, because either Salah, Fernandes or Kane will probably get the bullet. I'd say it's between Fernandes and Kane who I'll end up picking, because my team is lacking in a couple of areas where I probably shouldn't be depending on the likes of Dallas and Basuma as starters this early on to get me points. But if you did enjoy this video, guys, and you do want to ask any questions, comments below, do not hesitate. Subscribe if you're new around here. See you guys in the next video, and goodbye.